So I guess you need to use reflective practice in order to be better. I think especially when you get on prac, there are times, I just remember walking into my first placement and being like, I have no idea what I'm doing. And then at first you get that really structured reflection. Every supervision session you have, you sit down and what went well and what didn't go well. And you feel like you grow as a student. When you start as a new grad, it can be kind of terrifying because you walk in and you don't have that safety net of I'm a student anymore. But I look back after just having finished 12 months about sort of just reflecting and using sort of those skills. I can look back on times where, sometimes it just didn't feel right. You see a patient, didn't feel right, you sit down, you really think about what you've done, what could you do better, you use those skills you've learned in prac. And now I look back on sort of what I was like as a new grad and I'm like, wow, I can't believe I found that difficult. Because if you're constantly willing to sort of not criticize, but be aware of what you can do better, that's the only way you're going to grow. And you have to make a conscious effort. It's not going to come naturally. You do need to sit down, whether it's with a supervisor or just sit down by yourself and just think, what could I have done better? But also, how did this make me feel? Because chances are, if you felt not so great after an interaction with the patient, probably wasn't so great. So you've got to really think about how you can make it better. And eventually, I'm guessing when you're a much more experienced clinician, that will come more naturally. But I think as a student, a lot of the times you don't value reflection for what it is because you need to consciously do it. Otherwise, you're never going to get any better. I was just thinking the other day, like looking back from when I started and the first time you speak to a patient with psychosis, and I remember being like, I don't know what to do right now. Like, I don't know whether I challenge that, and it's super confronting. But now I'm at the point where someone will be like, yeah, I'm having these, thoughts about the FBI tracking me. And I'll be like, tell me all about that. I want to know more. And if I didn't reflect on that, I never would have been so comfortable. And I can't do my job unless I'm comfortable with that as well.
I make few mistakes these days because I do actually bring up a lot of the patient charts where I have made mistakes. I will bring up an example where in the last 7 years I have actually fractured a root on a top tooth, and in dentistry we call that causing oral anterofistula, which means you create a hole between the mouth and the nose. That's only happened when I graduated. That's never happened when I was as a student. So that's something that I have to reflect on myself. I've had 2 or 3 of them happen. The first time it happened, I honestly was panicked. I apologized profusely, but then I kept on looking at my notes. I went through the whole procedure in my head. I wrote a diary about exactly what I did. I talked to the oral surgeon about so the oral surgeon is a specialist who has done a medical degree and a dental degree. I've talked to them about how I would change the procedure. Every time I look at an x-ray now, I do actually see the risks involved, especially for upper teeth, to make sure I don't make the same mistakes. I have increased and I've actually gone to courses to make sure that I never make that mistake again. And I do tend to do things quite differently than when I first started.
So I think being a reflective practitioner is critical. Critical because I think you're able to take a look at what you're doing, glean advice from others, and then move you in perhaps the same direction, but perhaps in different directions that you hadn't considered. One of the ways that I think the course at UQ helped prepare me for this was through some of the assessment tasks. There were strong elements of the course that looked at what it means to be a reflective practitioner. We had journaling as a part of it. Something that's been helpful since working in the field has been supervision, absolutely critical. Often finding myself feeling a little bit stuck, not knowing what to do, and the supervision has been able to give me practical insights into myself, what I'm doing, the other person involved, and possible ways to move forward. So, yeah, I would say critical reflection and the idea of the reflective practitioner is an essential element to consider. Yeah.